Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast, where we are sharing life experiences to help others going through similar situations. And we hope that we can touch someone out there today, tomorrow, in the future, whenever. We are here to help through life experiences. Well, I want to welcome our special guest today, William Kesselman. We were going to chat about his journey to overcome abuse. Will was in a narcissistic abusive relationship for 10 years. He is now divorced 6. He is a special victims. He works with special victims for over 15 years. And he began the journey to heal from mental issues, narcissistic abuse, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, childhood traumas, stigmas, embarrassment. He is a man that was abused and weak. He is here to share his life experience with you to help you go from weak to strong if he can. So when we come back from this short commercial, we're going to bring Will right on up. We'll be back.
You almost look too good. I don't want all those girls staring at you all night when I'm not there to fight them off. Save it for me.
Yeah, that'd be true if we didn't both say it at the same time.
Don't be stupid. I knew it wasn't chicken. Go get me a drink. How many drinks do you need?
No, I thought I'd buy some for the boys as well.
No! That's not fair! I don't give you cash so you can spend it on other people. Who the is this?
Is that my phone?
Who is this?
No one, she's just an old friend from school.
Tell me the truth!
Ma'am.
Don't speak to her again.
You should probably get some.
Man, oh man, I got to give a shout out to Daryl. Yes. What a warm welcoming. Will, welcome to Unfiltered Unspoken.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So if you can go ahead and give us a brief introduction to yourself, and then we're going to bring Sid in, and Sid's going to ask you a few questions, and we're going to get the ball moving.
All good. So my name is Will. I'm from Montreal, Canada originally. I've been in the United States since just before September 11th. So we're talking like 20 or 30 years. I have lost count. I'm going to be honest. But in those 30 years I've been here, I went to school here, university, and then after that, I didn't deal with my childhood traumas enough. I dealt with them a little bit, but not enough. And so I ended up marrying someone who's more narcissistic. And so for 10 years, I was married, trying to make it work for the sake of family and this, that, and a bunch of other reasons, religion and whatever. Ultimately, trying to make things work for the sake of family or whatever doesn't usually work out very well, to be honest. And we all know this. But we try and we try and we try. And so here I am now, almost 7 years. It'll be 7 years in a few months that I'm out from the divorce. And I'm here to empower others, to guide others to their true potential empowerment, to live their best selves, to live their best lives. And part of my journey includes my childhood traumas, which was both being bullied severely, both in school and in the community, and also child abuse as well, by one of my parents. And so those three pieces that I've lived through, I try to use, whether it's examples or whether it's to help for me in terms of my own guidance or motivation to help others to go from mess to message. And so that's why I'm here today. So thank you again.
Again, thank you for being here. So I'll just start with how, for one, did you come across the good fight, and what about the good fight resonated with you, enough to reach out and want to give your life experience for us?
Well, a couple of things. One is I do check out podcasts on a regular basis. And so, both YouTube and other podcast platforms, there's a whole bunch of them. And also I saw on Need a Guest, and it's a Facebook group, they're asking for guests. And I'm like, oh, cool. Because sometimes you look at a podcast and you're like, well, where the heck do I find, the email, or where the heck do I find a way to contact the host or the producer or whoever. And again, everyone has their time limits, so I'm not knocking anything or anybody, but it was cool that it came up again in a Facebook group where it's a platform for people to look for guests or be guests or whatever. And I'm like, oh, cool, this is brilliant. So now I can, it's an easy way to do it. And here we are. Basically, here we are.
Yes. And I, just from listening to Ms. Demetria do your introduction, I see you're a special investigator. Mm-hmm. Now, was that something, you had sights on, through life, or, how did you stumble across it? Was your experience, I guess, vital in making that decision?
So, well, yeah, I always wanted to help people. I had offers after college, university, whatever you want to call it. I had offers to go into the private sector, whether it was business or whatever the company was, right? And I ended up originally in not-for-profit a little bit. And then this opportunity came up while I was still in school. And they're like, yeah, I work for this agency or whatever. And I'm like, that sounds cool. And the funny or ironic kind of thing was, I was only supposed to do it for 2 or 3 years, get certain skills, and then move on to do clinical psychology or forensic psychology or whatever. But 15 years later, still there. So.
Well, it seems like you enjoy it. You get fulfillment from it. And that is something that we all want in our jobs and our careers that we don't all have. So lucky you. Lucky you.
Yeah, no, I get fulfillment because I'm able to help others. I mean, obviously, those who want to be helped. You can't, if you have a Bible reference for a second, you can't have the water leave the stone. Just, whatever, it has to actually happen. A person has to want it. And so, yeah, but otherwise, a lot of fulfillment in that way. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Now, taking back to your childhood,
mm-hmm.
What transpired that, kind of led you into the arms of, someone who handles you that way? Do you think, for one, that there's a connection, and two, what things went on to lead to that?
Yeah. So doing a lot of research, because I'm in the middle of writing a series of books and that kind of thing, and other reasons for research in the past even. And the research to me, and what I know, having asked questions and seen stuff from childhood till now, for me, it's this particular parent, as I don't discuss who it is out of respect, because they brought me into the world, even though I would have preferred to have been treated a little bit nicer. But again, that's my opinion, so to speak. And so this particular parent was, I think, depressed. I think had their own issues. And I know for a fact that generationally, and we don't talk about this enough, there's a good friend of mine who says that the longest standing epidemic and pandemic is mental health, and that we haven't properly dealt with mental health as a society or in the world since the beginning of time. And so I think that my parent did have mental health concerns, not like the intense stuff, but still intense enough, like depression, anxiety, those kinds of things. And it impacted this parent. And there's some other pieces too, but ultimately it was the depression and some of the family stuff, them growing up, how they were treated by their parents, and those kinds of pieces that really has a role to play. And research shows this, studies have shown this, that it's less about what's called nature, meaning our biology, our DNA, and it's more about nurture. In other words, our environment, who we hang out with, who's in our community, what schools we go to, parents, cousins, relatives, all that kind of stuff. Those influences people have a role, a bigger role. Some say it's 50%. I think it's a little bit more than that. And there's a bigger role to play in terms of the environment. So,
Yeah, for sure. Now, moving on to your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Normally with narcissists, it's, in the beginning, you really don't sense it at all. It's just, it's a honeymoon stage. So, what was that like? What was it about her that kind of, swept you up? How did that come about?
Well, part of it was, so there's a couple of pieces to this. So the first thing was, at the time, I was very Orthodox Jewish religious, okay? Meaning my clothing is a bit different than what it is now. Not too much different, but still a little bit different. And so part of it is the pressure to get married quickly, because you're not supposed to have any relations or touching or anything else, male to female, before marriage. And I wanted to wait the full year. My ex, I was dating her at the time, of course, before marriage, but my ex now, so she wanted to move things up quicker. And we had discussed this originally in terms of how long, and then it's no, it has to be faster. And I'm like, well, okay, whatever. I'm not from a religious, I didn't grow up religious. I became religious later on, similar to like a born again Christian kind of thing, but a little bit different. And so basically, as things sort of changed, where things got quicker, and then the night of the wedding, she's like, now you're stuck with me. And I thought it was a joke. I thought it was sarcastic, honest. But then a couple of days later, she's saying, never a true word said in jest, which basically means sarcasm isn't sarcasm. And I didn't pick up on that then either. It took a while after that, but there was a whole lot of stuff where I needed, because of my upbringing and my childhood, where I didn't get the support and love I needed. Doesn't mean I wasn't supported and loved, but to me it wasn't enough. And so because of that, I felt I needed to find someone to make me whole or complete, which is the biggest thing one should not do. But again, I was not in the best situation, not in the best place for me. And part of that whole, that needing to be with someone, and also in terms of the religion and some other pieces. And so I had certain needs that I thought this woman would fulfill. And at the end of the day, she did not. And so that was the reason why I did marry her, in terms of, she was independent and she had a great degree and that kind of stuff. And she was able to provide as well, because this world is a 2-income world. And there's a whole bunch of other pieces to it. And all this was discussed beforehand. But then, like I mentioned, things sort of started to unravel even as early as the night of the wedding. So, yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. It's still almost, you have to be a special type of person to be able to like say no by the time of the wedding. So I completely understand. You still kind of feel locked at that time. But we are going to swing to a short break. But after that, we are going to go into the types of abuse you endured and how you can recognize them. For anybody watching, that they are actually facing those forms of abuse. Because I know sometimes when you can't put a face to it, you don't know what you're experiencing. Yeah. So again, we'll swing to a short break and we'll be right back.
Every man has a problem or will eventually have a problem that life insurance can help solve. As life insurance agents, we are and will always be a necessity in America, guys. People just think about funerals. They think about the funeral expense, but they don't think about the residual effects that deaths have on us. And if you've never dealt with a death firsthand or close to you, you wouldn't understand. A lot of people in America, they don't understand. That's why they don't feel life insurance is a necessity, and we're here to change that. It also safeguards your family against debt. Everything that's going on in America. Bills, high interest rates, gas, inflation. What we do is a necessity. Life insurance is a necessity to help with these things. You never know the effects that it's going to have down the line, guys. If you have family members that are not covered, get them covered, because it's going to affect you one way or another.
No, 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 no.
You know, Boaz and Ruth waited for her Boaz. She wouldn't just settle for anybody. The Bible said Boaz was a handsome man, a rich man, a spiritual man, a sensitive man, and that equals a husband. You gotta wait. You gotta wait on your Boaz. Don't just settle. But if you're not careful, when you go left and it's Friday night and you don't have a date and you're freaking out. I don't have a date. I didn't get married until I was 25. And you know, I just made a decision. I knew there was a call on my life. And I just said, I'm not going to go out and date just anybody and everybody. Because I know me. So I can remember, Pastor Hagee, I used to get ready and get all dressed up on Friday night to see what I would look like if I did have a date. You know, if you're a half a person and you keep going left and you're so needy, you just take anything. I'll take him, I'll take her. You're going to keep attracting half people. But if you'll stay out there and get comfortable being with yourself, you'll attract a whole person. Don't despise left. God's using left to get you right. Don't freak out because it's Friday night at the club. Boaz has some relatives, and if you don't watch it, you won't get the one God has for you. You'll get his relatives. To the girls, I found this on the internet. Boaz is spelled B-O-A-Z. Everybody say B-O-A-Z. And so he's got some relatives called broke-ass, po-ass, lying-ass, cheating-ass, dumb-ass, drunk-ass. Don't go out with him. Cheap-ass. Turn to somebody and say, I dated him. Locked up ass, good for nothing ass, lazy ass, and especially his third cousin beating your ass. Wait on your Boaz and make sure he respects your ass. Now there's your word. You wanted a word, you got a word.
No, 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 no.
All right, guys, we're back with Will Kesselman. We are now going into, what type of abuse you endured. What were the first signs? How did they ease that in? Because it always happens that way.
Yeah, so it was a lot of. It wasn't 100% gaslighting, like with most. And just to make sure I'm clear, narcissists, it's not like it's all or nothing. It's a spectrum. So there are people who are more narcissistic and a little bit less. And so for her, it was weaving in things that weren't 100% true or weren't 100% accurate in a sentence for a situation and describing something. And then it was, well, I didn't say, and then eventually it was a full-blown, I didn't say whatever. And it could have been financial issues where originally, like I mentioned, before the break, where we had discussed in terms of two-income family and that kind of stuff and whatever. And now all of a sudden it's, no, I'm going to raise the kids and you're going to work And then then it went from that to, well, she needs me to now only work 4.5 days a week, not 5 days a week, to help prepare for the Jewish Sabbath, which is a form of spiritual abuse, because you're using religion now in terms of manipulation, control, and power, and those kinds of things, or power and control, really. And there's an order to it. First, there's power, and there's control for someone doing the abuse. And so using religion, using the finances, and at times there were some aspects of, whether it's conversation or whether it's even verbal intimacy, not just physical, but verbal intimacy. And those were the three main pieces for me. And there's a few other stuff here and there where she even used food sometimes. When I had an injury to my arm at one point back in 2013 or so, 2013, 2014. And she wouldn't even give me the leftovers to a meal that she made, saying that she needed the leftovers for the next day for her so that she can work, which is ridiculous because she can always go buy stuff, or she can always have extra for the next day or whatever from other food in the house. But, those are the three main pieces: is the food, the finances, and also manipulation, gaslighting, all those kinds of pieces to it.
Yes, that is a familiar feat there, very much so. Now, what do you realize in retrospect that you should have recognized? What do you think that you should have recognized? What do you see as red flags now that you could share with the people?
So I'm a big believer in, because there's a lot of information out there and material, ebooks and books and whatever. I'm not knocking that at all whatsoever. But at the same time, I'm a big believer in working on oneself, right? If you're not in a good place, there's no point assessing the person who's narcissistic or co-parenting with a narcissist or all those pieces. It first boils down to you working on yourself. Okay. So for me, I should have gotten more mental health help, therapy or coaching or both, before I got married. And that would have opened my eyes. Because if you feel a void, everyone feels whatever. I felt an emptiness, a void, like a nothingness, where I knew that if I found the right person, it might sort of, quote unquote, solve that problem. But what I should have done was go and gotten help from a psychologist or a social worker, a therapist, that kind of thing, or even a coach. Depends on what kind of coaching that they do. And then on top of that, if I were in the marriage, what I should have realized was that at the point where I knew it wasn't going to work, there's no point staying. Yes, you work hard to keep it. I don't believe in divorce. I believe in people needing divorce if it's necessary. But I don't believe in divorce frivolously and that kind of stuff, like willy-nilly or whatever. In my case, it was necessary. Okay. And so if you know it's not working and you've tried marriage counseling, you've tried, your faith, your religion, there are clients that I have where they go to church or they go to the mosque or synagogue or whatever they're going to. And, they rely on their faith-based minister, preacher, rabbi, imam, whatever. Those people are there to guide on one half, but the other half is going to be the mental health pieces, the therapist and whatnot. Seek those people out. And if it's still not working and it's not working, there's no point, because many people for the sake of the kids, I'm going to keep this going for years and years and years and years. It makes it 10 times worse. The kids see what's going on. And, that's the general gist, is if you know. That's what it boils down to. That doesn't mean don't fight for what you want, which is a healthy marriage and a proper marriage, but two people have to tango. And if the other person doesn't want to tango because they are in it for themselves or they have a certain viewpoint, well, then it's not a marriage. It's a one-person marriage, really. So.
Chime in. I have a question for you. Why it's a multiple question, so I'm going to ask you the first one. Why did you marry her knowing signs? Because you did mention that before you got married, she started showing these signs even more so the day before the marriage. Why didn't you change your mind? She kind of had these narcissistic behaviors before the marriage.
So in any relationship, right, there's compromises. People make compromises. And so in the dating phase, the only thing that really was an issue was the shortening of the engagement time to getting married quicker. It's the night of the wedding, not the night before the wedding, the night of the wedding. So after the wedding and is done, and we're in the hotel room, that kind of thing, and it's later on in the night or the morning or whatever, and she's like, "Well, now you're stuck with me." Okay, so the marriage already happened when she's saying that, and I laugh now in retrospect. Obviously, it wasn't funny back then, clearly, and so. The only real sign that I saw, and this is typical of someone who's more narcissistic or an actual narcissist, diagnosed and everything else, where they're constantly showing interest. They're constantly, whether it's buying flowers, if it's a guy to the woman, or if it's a woman to the man, showing affection, verbal affection, physical affection, showing that they care and they're involved and that kind of stuff and supporting whatever. And so you're still in that sort of blissful state, this honeymoon state, this emotional state, and emotions cloud judgment. Let's be really honest with everybody, okay? Emotions cloud judgment. That's why I always tell my female clients, women usually when they're dating or whatever, they almost always have 1 or 2 or 3 friends that I call the gatekeepers. Women rely on your friends who are the gatekeepers, okay? You have them for a reason. I don't know how or why it always happens this way, but women usually have a couple of gatekeepers or 2 or 3 gatekeepers. Talk to them. If they say something, hear them. Don't just push it away or don't listen to them. Listen to them and at least try and figure things out. They may not be exactly correct, but listen to them. Because again, when you're in that emotional state of dating or engagement or whatever, you're not 100% thinking with your brain. You're thinking with your heart and your emotions, and emotions do cloud judgment.
Okay. So, so she trapped you pretty much. She knew what she was doing. So you got trapped.
Yeah.
So, I think like even for me, we're a magnet coming from an abusive background as well. We're a magnet. It's like we're attracted to abuse from a child. We don't realize it, but I think a lot of times that's what we attract, because as you said, you had a parent that had like similar flaws, and it's like, that the attraction to your wife.
Yes, but and the but is, so as I'm doing more and more research, yes, so it looks like that in terms of, if I, for example, let's say I have mommy issues. It's usually for men, it's mommy issues. For women, it's daddy issues, usually, on average. Okay. And so for me, let's say I had mommy issues. Okay. And therefore, I'm going to, want a certain thing or whatever. But my point is that it's not just that I want someone who they themselves were either abused or abusing somebody else, and I'm okay with that because that magnet or everything else. It's more a matter of they have something that they have to work on, and I have something that I have to work on. And so because I'm not in my full element, I'm not in the person I should be, I'm a person who's still working on myself at that time. So I'm going to be attracting people that fulfill that in terms of 2 halves, right? It's 2 halves to a whole in general. And male, female, female, or male, female, whatever we're talking about, just be respectful to everybody, okay? And it's not just about abuse itself. It's about a gap that's a little bit different and bigger than that. It's one person's okay with power and control, and the other person's okay with being dominated, with being controlled, with being whatever. It's not necessarily about abuse itself. It's in terms of who's comfortable as the dominant person and who's comfortable as being the less dominant or controlled, manipulated, or whatever, to a point. And again, it's different, like amounts. Like one person could be 60% dominant, the next person's 80% dominant. The person who's with the 80% dominant person is again 20% dominant or comfortable in their skin, and 80% may have self-esteem issues or whatever else. And so that's more about how I view it, as opposed to someone who was abused as a child, then wants to abuse somebody else, find someone who has this magnet of, yes, I'll receive abuse. It's not that per se of the behavior. It's more a matter of a little bit one stage before that, in terms of the mindset and the self-esteem and the internal stuff, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Agree.
It definitely does. I'm sorry, Daryl, you cutting in.
I think what he said is so profound for me, because we deal that word. I believe a lot of people of us walk around with narcissistic behavior. And what happens is, I believe sometimes, is the denial and not the awareness that, as you stated, we all have to look at ourselves and see what it is we need to work with. Because it's very easy to identify somebody else's behavior, but the question should be asked, why am I hanging around that behavior and comfortable? So apparently it's something going on within you.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of times I think we use somebody else's behavior to cover our own of the things we don't want to deal with. Because in reading the definition of narcissistic, I have a whole lot of that. And it causes me to have to look at me and say, okay, why do I want to control this? What is the root of this particular behavior that caused it to manifest itself in narcissistic behavior? Because it becomes that when you don't want to address it.
So there's a couple of things, if I may jump in, or I can
Go
wait.
ahead.
Okay. So, like I mentioned before, narcissism is a spectrum, right? And those who are well-adjusted, those who are working, those who whatever have narcissistic traits, not completely, not 100%, not even 80 or 60%, right? There's actually a couple of books, but one book that I do, publicly talk about is Surrounded by Narcissists, okay, by Thomas Eriksson, who's a Swedish professor, PhD, I think it is. And so in there he talks about, and he has like the checklist of whether you are, you aren't, and how to tally everything up, whatever. And most people who are well-adjusted, working, parents, whatever, you're going to have, 9 or even 10 possibly traits or points off the system, this chart, out of 30. Okay, and everyone's like, whoa, that's a lot. But we're people. We're going to have those kinds of things, and it's going to be, but we're not 20 or 30 out of 30. We're more like, 10, 11, 9, 8, whatever, and that's okay. And more importantly, those in the military, for example, and those also who are like surgeons, you want them to be a bit more narcissistic, not like inappropriate, not cold, not whatever, obviously, but they have to make tough decisions. So you need them to have a certain mindset. This is biology and this is evolution as well, in that sense of, people filling different roles. We mentioned before mirroring, right? We mirror in terms of who we want to attract and who we attract and everything else. It's the same thing in terms of jobs. There's an element of attraction for us in terms of what job fits us and who we are. So I can talk forever about what Mr. Washington just said, but that's my brief, comment, I guess. So
okay, I have another question, and I'm gonna go back to Sid, and then I'll chime back in. Did you want to be loved, or was that the love that you were used to growing up as a child?
Well, that's a great question. That's a great question. So there was a lot of anger that I didn't realize until I really looked myself in the mirror. And I don't like using cliches, but it's really true. You look yourself in the mirror, you go to a therapist or whatever, or a good friend talks to you. In hindsight, I was loved more than I was willing to accept, than I was willing to see, that I was able to accept or see. And there was still anger, and there's still stuff and situations that I believe I should have gotten more, a little bit more at the very least, support, love, or whatever. At the same time, though, it wasn't like there was no love at all. There was no support at all. Most of us growing up have some support, some love, some something. And there's usually anger that gets in the way. Fear, anger, but it's usually anger, because anger is the expression of hurt, pain, and that kind of stuff, where we're just so tired of being in hurt and pain. The body can't stay at hurt and pain. It has to go to anger or frustration, and then goes back eventually to pain, and it goes back into that yo-yo, so to speak. But again, trying to be brief here. So
you're doing fine. You're doing fine. We're actually doing really good with time, so don't worry. Now, did you learn, or did she share? I don't know what, how she was as a person, but did she share, any of her own trauma, or did you discover, things that she might have went through to form her into who she was in the relationship?
Yeah, so she didn't share the whole story until maybe a year or two into marriage, or 6 months to a year into marriage, give or take. And I don't know if things would have changed, because again, you're so clouded by emotion and all that kind of stuff and everything else. But at the same time, I know that it would have hit me a little harder than the more relaxed version or chilled out version of what I was told when we were dating, or even when we were engaged. So yes, she went through some abuse, and how do I word this? I people are people. I want to be respectful still and everything else, despite whatever I went through and that kind of thing. And so, I do think that on some level she doesn't see how much it's impacted her, whether it's behavior, whether it's little nuanced stuff like the words that she may use, or some of the things that she does or says or whatever. But yes, she definitely had issues in her childhood, issues with her family. And that did have, I believe, I'm not a therapist or I can't diagnose, but I believe it did have an issue, or did have an impact, with her and how she views men in terms of marriage, or family, and a bunch of other stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yes. So I do want to also ask, because I see, again, just in kind of your introduction here, that you did serve as a resource in like legal cases. Mm-hmm. What kind of cases, were you a witness for? Where did you come in and give your feedback and your expertise?
Okay, so I have been a special victims investigator. I'll be retiring very soon, actually, for mental health reasons, because I've seen a lot and it takes a toll over time. But I've been a special victims investigator, which means seeing, and again, just warning everybody, I'm not going into details, but just in terms of the names, this may trigger you, so I apologize. Whether it's sex abuse, human sex trafficking, child abuse, domestic violence, or now they call it intimate partner violence. It used to be domestic violence, now it's IPV, intimate partner violence, to be more gender neutral. And those are the main ones that I investigate as an investigator. And so I'll testify on behalf of either mostly the children, but sometimes the mothers as well, depending on the circumstances. But it's usually the kids, and really make sure that the families are safe, whether it's the father who's the one who's taking care of the kids properly and the mom is not, or vice versa, where the mom is the one taking care of the kids properly and the dad is not, making sure that the person who's abusive, the perpetrator, is excluded or is following whatever the court orders are, or following whatever the mandates are, to make sure that everyone's safe. It doesn't mean that a father or mother should never have access to their children. It just means it has to be done safely, and then we follow a process so that things can happen. So that's basically what I do in terms of testifying in court and trials. I've been in, I've probably 300 trials or more, to be honest, or court cases at least. And, whether it's writing the petition, testifying in court, being in conferences, talking to lawyers, making the legal stuff speak English to the clients who I'm working with, that kind of thing. So
I have a quick question for you while you're there. Based off of your history of employment and the things that you're involved with, do you feel, or is there a part of those things that you are doing? How do you separate, or is it motivated by what you've gone through? And how do you deal with your level of judgment and making some of the decisions that you're doing? Because I mean, I know that I had to wrestle with a lot of the things that I involved with. I was doing it because of the pain. And so it caused me to a certain degree to be kind of biased, but still say that I'm helping in that area, if that makes any sense.
No, absolutely. So there's a bunch of different stages to that question. So I'll go in order for me in terms of a timeline. When I was married, I was having the mostly verbal abuse and all the other stuff that was mostly verbal. And then having it on both fronts, as I call it, both at home and then going to work and having it at work in terms of seeing it in terms of person A affecting person B and that kind of stuff, not being able to have a refuge, a safe spot or whatever. My safe spot was driving home back and forth, but ultimately for me, and everyone's biased, let's be real, very real and raw about this. Okay. But ultimately, and I've had my own prejudices, I'll say it properly. And it takes time to work through things, right? It takes time to work through. And again, I'm not saying that I was ever negative. Like I myself have been called words and names and stuff similar to a person of color being called the N-word, for example. Okay. And so there's a sensitivity that I have for that. There's other sensitivities I have as well. But I never fully understood, with my background from Canada and some other pieces to it, the African-American culture or Latinx culture or other cultures or inner city issues in America and whatever. And I had to grow up quickly. I had to learn some stuff. And so that plays into, but let's be real, right? That plays into some of the biases and prejudices and everything else. It doesn't mean I was ever negative, it just means I didn't know. And so I may have thought a certain way. I'm like, oh, darn, or oh, snap, if I may say that. Things have a certain way of being presented, whether it's the news or media, or even with textbooks, school compared to other schools, for example. And so to get to your point, though, in terms of that other part of it is, because everyone has biases and prejudices, I was always very careful, especially because as a child, I was bullied and abused and whatever. And I was always sort of aware of power and control. I never was in my full comfortable place till after my marriage, after the divorce. And so even when I was married, I had to use the government job as a crutch to have authority knock on the door. Like, who am I to knock on the door? Who am I to tell parents you can't do this, you can do this, or guide them in what they should or shouldn't do, as opposed to wagging a finger? Because no one wants to have a finger wag, especially if I'm white color, white complexion, even though I have other pieces that are mixed in my heritage. But even though my complexion is white and I'm going into places of color, different colors, all colors, so to speak, and they're like, who are you to say whatever? It's based off behavior that I'm there. It's based off of facts that I'm there. It's not based off of me, the guy who looks white or isn't white or whatever, with a Jewish last name and so on and so forth. Let's be real, okay? It's me, the human being, guiding you in terms of behaviors and facts, not the other pieces. And that forced me to grow up as well. Now, look, was I perfect? No one's perfect, okay? But a lot of it, the training was phenomenal. The guidance in terms of supervisors and up the chain of command, that kind of stuff was very, very good. And so you learn quickly, you develop quickly. And yeah, there were issues, of course. Yes, there's, like I said before, that duality of not having a safe front. At home, there are issues, and at work, there are issues on top of everything else, So yeah, but for me, I always felt like I was going into a day of Law and Order SVU, the TV show, even though I didn't work. No, I'm being honest. Honestly, that's how I detached a little bit. Because again, you really have to have some detachment. And if you do that for too long, and that's where I am right now working through it, I've gotten a lot better. If you're so detached emotionally, because you have no choice, you have to, if you're seeing all this stuff again and again and again, okay, day in, day out, 4 cases a day, 10 cases a day, whatever the number is, right? And you have to turn off that emotion at least a little bit. And that has an effect over time. It just does, And so that's why I need to retire. Why I'm going to be retiring very, very soon is because for my own health, my mental health, my health, physical and all that and good stuff. it comes to a point where what's the cost of earning a paycheck versus my actual health and my mental health and everything else. So,
And I'm going to chime in on that because I have a question just off of that. So, taking tolls from dealing with others' traumas and yours on top of that, trying to cope every day, how are you able to deal with others' traumas and yours at the same time? And do you think that you're going to need additional professional help once you retire?
So we've always gotten, it's a thing at work that we all eventually go to the employee assistance program. We don't say that we're going, because there can be repercussions sometimes in terms of certain chains of command or people, whatever, viewing it not in the right way. It's sad, but it's true. Okay. And again, I don't work for the NYPD, and the NYPD, it's a whole nother can of worms. It's like 10 times worse, mental health and weakness and whatever, because you're supposed to be the strong cop and everything else. Whereas my division was more of a mental health kind of division. So there were less of a taboo issues, right? But it's still like, are you well enough to do the job, mental health and everything else? So I have gone over the course of my career to a therapist at different times, whether it's a couple of sessions or whether it's 6 weeks or 6 months or whatever. And I have no shame in saying that. The only thing is that I wasn't in a place, and that's part of the journey in life as well. I wasn't in a place to receive it properly. There were still anger issues. There were still other issues that was within me, that if I had therapy now, and I will eventually get therapy probably shortly.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, having therapy now is different from having therapy back then, even if I'm still working, because A, I'm older, A, there's more experience and there's more wisdom and that kind of thing. But at the same time, I've been working on myself a lot because I'm transitioning from the day job, quote unquote, in terms of helping people from on the government side of things, to doing my coaching and consulting, where I'm still seeing the same thing, the same kinds of situations, the same kinds of things. And you do need to have outlets. So journaling is amazing. Reading certain books and then journaling off of that, because it changes your perspective. When you read certain stuff, it's information. It's a new way of looking at stuff. And then ultimately, it's going to be going back to therapy as well.
Okay. All right. I'm going to let Sid ask you a question, and then I'll come back and ask another question.
All good.
Yes. So I had it I had it and then I lost it. It happens. Well, moving on to your consulting and coaching. I guess if someone feels like they would need your services or wants to enlist your services, I know, as technically a cop, you would step in after the problem has been presented. I guess now moving forward, what you're trying to do, when do you suggest that somebody enlist help? Is the consulting something that you should, request or bring on to, take to court, have something tangible to take to court? Or should you enlist it for mediation purposes? At what point in the process that people are discovering, these family issues, should they reach out to someone of your stature?
Yeah, so especially with what I do as a consultant. So just to make sure we're clear, I was never working for the actual police department or the NYPD or detective squad or whatever. I worked with them for a different division of both city and state government in New York State. Okay, just to make sure we're clear, because it can get confusing, and that's all good. But I did a lot of work with the NYPD, special victims, detective squads, and other cops and that kind of stuff. Anyway, so to answer your question, though, most people come to me when it's a little later in the game, and I can still reverse and help, because my expertise is in understanding the police, how they work and that kind of stuff, and not being railroaded by them. Understanding CPS, child welfare, DCFS, whatever you want to call them, depends on the state and county that you're in, and how they think, and how to make sure you aren't manipulated by that system, because the abuser will do that. They'll use all these different, agencies, police, child welfare, the courts, the judges, lawyers, whoever they can, to manipulate and exert power and control. And so even as I'm growing in my career as a consultant and coach, I do also have resources and information on how to deal with even someone in a workplace or a co-parenting situation when it comes to what to say, what not to say, how to handle it. And again, it's all based off of you, the person, not the narcissist, like I mentioned before. And I have a WET system for words, emotions, and time. But it's based off you, the person, not the other person. Because remember, emotions do cloud judgment, okay? And so we're not always able to 100% assess the other person, whoever they may be, a coworker, colleague, someone in your house of worship, someone who lives down the street or whatever, or your own husband, wife, or who knows what, okay? And so if you're working on yourself, again, words, emotion, time, words in terms of the words you use, emotions in terms of your feelings and making sure you're aware of them, but time, you don't have to react, you can respond, right? You can respond in terms of waiting an extra second. And our nervous system is so important to how we even think. We don't even realize this kind of stuff. And so just by taking an extra breath, just a breath, it's almost like taking paddles and shocking someone when they're not able to breathe or whatever, they're unconscious, right? By taking that breath or slowing down how you talk, it changes everything, how you feel, how you think. And that then gets a different response from the other person. So people come to me for different reasons, whether it's work situations or entrepreneurs who have people who work for them who are alienating other people, like people who work for them and their employees are alienating somebody else because they're more manipulative or dominant and how to handle that. Or if they have to let them go, I may say, well, look, this is what you should be considering. It's never my decision as a consultant, of course. And then it's also other stuff in terms of co-parenting, before divorce, after divorce, how to handle it, what to say, what not to say, how to get out if you're in an abusive situation, how to make sure your go bag is hidden if you have to have a go bag. I can go on and on and on. I don't want to ramble forever, but you get the idea in terms of just how extensive the knowledge and skills that I have are for those who need help in any of those kinds of pieces or fields.
Okay. I have another a question. I know for me, a piece of my healing process was I would go to work or anywhere that I was at. I would always make others feel good, which a lot of folks confided in me because of that. And I actually built a beautiful networking system because of that. And folks actually really opened up to me about life experiences that they were going through. And because I just sat and talked to them, a lot of the situations had helped me. And I actually had a lot of folks to say thank you. But I would go home years, probably over 7-8 years, even longer than that before what happened to me. And I would cry because I was so depressed because it was a good feeling to make others feel good, but I was hurting inside. So my question to you is something, similar to my life experience is going through your own abuse and helping others. Was that somewhat tactic to suppress the pain and abuse that you were going through? And what advice can you give others to help overcome abuse?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. Most people who are in a helping profession were either abused or someone who they love was abused, someone who they saw was abused, something like that, where they want to try and equalize. They want to try and shift the balance of power, so to speak. Those who are my colleagues, most of my colleagues, because a lot of our focus is on child abuse and domestic violence and trafficking and that kind of stuff, most of my colleagues had some sort of, they touched some aspect of child abuse or domestic violence, whether it was a brother or sister or a cousin or themselves or their parents. It was usually one of the three. It could have been a little bit further out in terms of the family stuff, but usually it was closer to home. And for me now, in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years even, but before that I didn't realize it as much, but now I know for sure that I only felt validated as a person. And this is sad to say, but it's true, because when you're abused, you don't really have that self-worth, right? But I only felt validated as a person if I was able to be helpful to somebody else. And so I was never, never is the wrong way to say this. At the time, I wasn't aware of just how much that was a crutch to make me feel validated or loved or whatever. Now, I still get a high from helping people. I still, have those good vibes and feelings, but I'm aware of my own self-worth, my own, let's say status in the world or standing in the world or whatever. And it's not just that I need this to feel as if I have any self-worth at all whatsoever, but it's more a matter of still feeling good because I'm able to guide people with information that took me 4 years to fight the government on to be able to give to the public. Okay. So, and that's, a key kicker. Now, to answer your other question on how to get out, getting out obviously looks very different to different people because of whatever they're going through. But there's always usually power and control. First power and then control. And if you don't talk to your friends as much or at all, you don't go to the same church or go to the same house of worship at all or less, you don't, you can't go out shopping because the significant other is monitoring when you go shopping or if you can go shopping or that kind of stuff. Those are massive red flags. It doesn't mean that you're in a marriage and things change and you stop doing recreational stuff like hockey or you stop watching TV for like sports games if you're a guy, okay? What it does mean is that basic human interaction, basic network, the fiber of human life, family, friends, that kind of stuff. If you're being isolated with that kind of stuff, that's an issue. It doesn't mean I'm 100% correct, but that's an issue. The other last piece to your question, and this is really, really important, the research that I've seen, and that isn't always quoted correctly in the public, is that narcissists, the wrong thing is that narcissists have low self-esteem. Actually, narcissists either have average self-esteem or usually a little bit above average self-esteem, because you can't put someone else down if you don't have any self-esteem at all whatsoever, and not low, not less than average or whatever. It just doesn't work that way. Okay. I used to think that I'm being, real and raw. I used to think narcissists have low self-esteem, so they have to push someone else down so that they can be up. It's not about that. It's that they're so used to pushing people down that they don't feel, pardon me, they don't feel comfortable. It's almost like we're used to routines, right? And if the routine changes, our fear mechanism kicks in, like what's going on, what's wrong, because it's based on where's the lion, where's the bear, where's the whatever that's going to eat me, because the circumstances have changed. And so for a narcissist, it's, they're used to a certain pattern. We're all used to patterns, but they're used to a certain pattern. And then if they don't see those patterns where they don't feel a certain way, they need to push down. Okay. But it's not about self-esteem. It's based off of, they have to push down so they feel that pattern of stuff. Otherwise they'll push harder to feel back to where they want to, where they feel like it's normal, because their normal is pushing somebody down.
It's like validating their life.
Yes,
hurting someone is a validation
yes,
for them.
And it's normal for them in the sense that it's not normal to have someone who's pushing back on them, for someone who's changing the narrative, changing the script, changing where the power and control is, all those pieces. That's not normal for them. That's not comfortable for them. That's why they'll go have a narcissistic feed somewhere else. If you are like, hell no, I'm no longer going to be a victim, or I'm now a survivor, I'm moving on, or whatever, it doesn't mean you have to cut them off cold turkey, because I'm a big believer also that you cannot shut them out, unfortunately, that you have to interact with them. There's actually studies that show that there's more and more people who are more and more narcissistic as time is going on, and there's other reasons for that, not for now, of course. But ultimately, we have to interact with people who are more narcissistic, and therefore there's tools, there's words, there's ways to approach it. But it boils down to my WET system. Again, words, emotions, time. Focusing on those three things has a major impact for us as a person.
Okay. So I have one more question that I'm going to let Sid ask the final question and close it out. I know really quick you said the abuser uses the system to gain control. Does the system see through those lies? Because I guess it's a lot of innocent folks that are caught up in the system, and the abusers continue to abuse the victim, especially if the system doesn't believe them.
So this is where, because of my experience as an investigator and talking to cops and that kind of stuff, where I'm going to shift the question ever so slightly. So there are systematic and systemic issues. Don't get me wrong. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, it's each cop individually, each investigator individually, who's now talking to usually the perpetrator, the abuser first, and they now control the narrative. So when they then go to the survivor or victim, they're asking questions based off of what they think is the baseline, what they think is the foundation, what they think are the facts. And those aren't the facts or the baseline or the foundation or the truth. It's half truth, 60% truth, 70% truth, with a whole bunch of almost truths or lies or whatever you want to call them. And that manipulation is there so that if the cop asks general questions, or the investigator, the person who's abused is going to answer the question, say, yeah, this and whatever happened. And then that validates the abuser who said a certain stuff. They tacked on things to that same sentence that isn't true, that isn't correct, that isn't appropriate. And that's how things go. People aren't, my point is that as people, we don't sort of think of it in a systemic or systematic way. We think of it more of, okay, well, this is the story I'm being told, or the circumstances I'm being told, or the experiences I'm being told, and I'm now assessing it. Does it make sense? Is it plausible based off of my experience as a cop, detective, investigator, whatever, of 5 years, 10 years, whatever years, right? Or if you're a rookie, you go to your people who have been there for a while and say, hey, this is what I was told. Does this jive? Does this make sense? And most seasoned people say, yeah, okay, that's what you've heard 1,000 times. But if you're critical enough, and this is the point, most people are very chill, relaxed, no fault of anybody's own. And so we're not like out to get each little fact. I, as an investigator, have seen enough holes in people's statements where each time I'm told something, I'm like, wait a second, how about this? How about this? How about this? And everyone's like, people used to call me Columbo. People used to call me digging and whatever. And I would also was known for getting into a little bit of trouble of taking too much, quote unquote, too much time on cases and stuff, because I knew an abuser, a perpetrator is going to lace. It's almost like when you lace stuff into marijuana.
Yeah,
they're gonna lace stuff into the truth to make it all appear true when it's not all true. And it's those small little non-truths or lies that matter. It's those things that are the key things that shift the whole situation to a different situation.
So what advice can you give to the victim when they're in a situation like that? Because you know the abuser is going to take control of that situation.
Yes.
So how should the victim respond to law enforcement when they come to them and just say, hey, A, B, C, D? How should they respond to let them know that, hey, he's playing games with you?
So going back to words, emotions, time. Okay. So I'll give you an example with child welfare. It's the best example I can give you. Okay. Everyone, goes to a child welfare person, CPS or whatever you want to call them. Okay. And they go, well, you just took my kids away. You're now causing trauma. But they do this all the time. If you get into the CPS's head and say, hey, they have food, they have clothes, they're going to school, their grades are good. You list all the things that show that they aren't neglected, aren't abused, and then say, what's really going on? Why are you saying I'm removing the kids? That then changes everything. And if they can't answer those questions, something's terribly wrong. And you need to either call a cop to write a police report on the CPS, for example, or you need to get a good lawyer right away because something's fishy. But CPSs are required to say, okay, well, it's because you hit them, or it's because of whatever, okay? And then it's like, well, I hit them for these reasons. It was self-defense or whatever it is. In other words, don't focus on the emotions, because we all do this. And it's not a fault, not a bad thing. We all think from our perspective, not putting ourselves in the other person's shoes from their perspective, what they see every day, what they do every day, and then break it down into behaviors and situations, not having the emotions cloud all of it. Because if you're being abused, there's emotion there. You're fearful, you're afraid, you're angry, you're upset. You're not going to be 100%. And with CPS especially, you're allowed to have a person of support with you at all times in any proceeding, home visits or anything else, as an example. Okay, you're allowed in any state. This is proper legal. This is like the legit. Okay, there's more to it, of course, which a lot of people hire me, of course, but. So with a police officer, it's telling your story, but also saying, hey, look, you may think it's this, but it's not for these reasons. Don't go into the emotional stuff. Don't go into the assumption stuff. really break it down, and get into a conversation with the cop. What did he tell you so I can tell you my side of the story? Okay, not these cops and investigators and others will say, okay, tell me your side of the story, and then they go to the other person, tell me your side of the story, that kind of thing. Ask questions back to the cop. It doesn't mean you become the person asking them questions. They will resent that. But if you just say a little bit and say, hey, can I clarify whatever he said? That kind of thing. Or can I, if there are any questions you have from what he said, because he's known to manipulate, he's known to whatever, I want to make sure you know what's really going on. If you play it like that, not I'm right, but hey, I want to help you know what's really going on in that kind of way, from their perspective, empathy in that sense, which is very hard to do if you're being abused. I'm not going to lie on that one. Okay. But again, getting into someone else's shoes instead of us, because we all do this. We're all like, why are you hitting me? Why are you mouthing off to me? Why are you whatever? As opposed to breathing. Remember I said before, breathing is so huge. Take that breath, that time, 5 seconds, 1 second, whatever it is. Think, oh, maybe they were mouthing off because they had a bad day. And you talk, like you were saying, Miss Good, when you spoke to these people, they felt listened and heard. They calmed down a bit. They got to probably better solutions, honestly, whatever the situation was. And the point wasn't to give them solutions in the conversation. The point was to have them felt heard and comforted. But eventually it let the clouds part a bit and they can see things clearer and they got to where they had to go. That's the point. Get to where you have to go with this cop, with the CPS, with whoever, because that will be the biggest, best thing you could ever do, as opposed to quick judgment, quick assumptions, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so I'm going to bring Sid up to ask you the final questions, and then I'm going to wrap it up and close it out.
Cool.
Well, I just asked towards the end, what is it that you are working on currently? I know you did say that you're working on a series of books. What do you have out currently that can be consumed and viewed and reviewed, all of that? Social media handles, tag yourself, shameless plug.
So I'm doing a lot, actually. So I'm actually going to be revamping my entire website so that there's more content on there and people can engage with it better. In terms of social media, you can find me at William Kesselman on Facebook. You can also go to Will Kesselman on Instagram. And there's other places where you can look for control and power strategy, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And you can reach me that way. I do respond to everything. But on the website, there's a way to say book time. You don't have to just book a time with me. You can ask for a copy. The mini ebook that's about 12 pages is coming out this Sunday. Come heck or high water. I've been stalling a bit and trying to make sure it's clean and everything else and whatever. But it's not going to be perfect no matter what I do. So I'm going to come out with it no matter what on Sunday. And then the next ebook on top of that is 80 to 100 pages. It's a build out. The wet system then leads into another system, and you add on a few extra letters, and it's a more powerful system. And then you add on a letter after that. That'll be a 200-page book. That should be out probably in January or February. And it's all based on how to interact with people who are manipulative, controlling, all that kind of stuff. Aside from the Aside from the ebooks and the website, I have 2 Facebook groups that I run. It's Take Control of Your Divorce Before He Does, and that's for women. And for men, it's Men Take Control of Your Divorce Before She Does. Because with divorces, while I'm not a lawyer, I know it very well how to handle all this kind of stuff, and I guide people how to have testimony work, how to have information speak court, all that kind of stuff, so you're protected and aren't getting railroaded mental health wise, character wise. Oh, she's crazy. Oh, he's crazy. Oh, this, oh, that. There's ways to shut all that stuff down with the right paperwork, the right proof. Even if you don't have a lot of witnesses who are going to come testify, there are people who've seen stuff and heard stuff that they can just put things in writing and they don't have to be bothered with court. And that is enough to connect with what you are saying in court. Because we view on TV, oh, I can just say stuff, I can just testify. That is not how court works. Sad but true. You have to have the right foundation, the right build-up. And I help people build up stuff in whatever situation it is, whether it's just communication stuff, person to person, or in a work environment, or that kind, or pre-divorce, post-divorce, or whatever. So those are the main things: is helping people through the free Facebook groups, helping people in terms of these. The 12-page ebook will be free or complimentary, although it's a $47 value, to be honest. And then the other stuff will likely have a cost to it. But for right now, I want to give as much resource and value to people as possible, because again, I'm dealing with people who don't always have resources, money or whatever, and I want people to have as much as they possibly can have for as less as possible. So
if someone wants to make a monetary donation to the cause, how do they do that?
So I'm a for-profit, so they can go onto PayPal and send something if they wish. I greatly appreciate it. I do. But ultimately, the biggest thing they can do is if they know someone going through this, even if it's for an hour where I give them a free hour of my time, I'd rather someone not go through whatever hell they're going through. And I say hell for a reason, because there's a lack of hope and a lack of direction and path and whatever, where I can give them that hope and path. And that's far more valuable than I do accept money, don't get me wrong, but that's far more valuable than $5 or $10 because it's who they are as an essence, right? Like that's why I'm doing this, is to really help people. So anyway, that's my my answer to your question.
That's what Daryl always says. Your gift you're supposed to give as a gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ties in.
Yes. Well, I want to thank everyone. Sid, thank you. Will, thank you. Daryl, thank you. Thank you, Good Fight. Thank you, Good Unfiltered Unspoken. This was another wonderful episode, as always. Pointers that I have learned. Will, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Seriously, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. 2 pointers that I want to pull that if folks were listening to Will is, if you are ever in a situation with CPS from a narcissistic abuser or a manipulating abuser, abuse in a whole of someone trying to take control through the court system, if an officer comes to question you, break it down. Do not go into defending yourself. Ask the officer, what did the person tell you, so that you can clarify yourself, because they are a known manipulator and that you are currently going through abuse from them. So let them know your side in a calm manner so that the abuser doesn't take control of that situation. If you're going through a CPS situation, you are allowed to have one person all the time with you. So take advantage of having that one person with you all the time so that you're not alone in that situation. And you can definitely have your witness put it in writing. So if they're not at court, no matter what you hear, the witness has to be there, or people are like, I don't want to go to court. Just have them write a letter for you. Get it notarized, take it to court, and that is your documentation right there. Or if you can afford it, get a lawyer immediately, because something is sketchy and it is not right. So thank you for tuning in to Unfiltered Unspoken. Again, if you would like to make a monetary donation, Cash App, The Good Fight, we appreciate you. Our social media tags are running at the bottom. LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, The Good Fight. There is an E on the end of good, GOODE. And please subscribe to us on YouTube, Unfiltered Unspoken. We will see you soon.